Today's session is Discover the Power of LinkedIn, and it's all about using LinkedIn as a small business owner. I've only got about 40 minutes or so, so we're not going to cover a massive amount, but really this is aimed at introducing you or reintroducing you to the LinkedIn social network. So my name's Andrew Knowles. I am a trainer, an explainer, and a coach to small business owners. I started training businesses 25 years ago. I got involved in software training and spent a lot of time training big businesses. 12 years ago, I went freelance as a copywriter, very quickly got into using social media, and a lot of my time now is spent training and explaining social media and digital marketing tools to small business owners. We have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to today's communication technology. And a lot of small businesses struggle to know how to use it well, and a lot of small businesses struggle to know which different tools to use. So part of why I do what I do is because I see those struggles. I mean, just in the last month, I'm aware of a number of business owners who've sort of exclaimed either to me directly or indirectly on social media, I'm confused. There are so many different recommendations as to about which way I should go, which one is the right one, which way, you know, should I sign up to this course or should I do this, that, and the other? So part of my mission is to try and help you as a small business owner navigate your way through some of this. I don't have all the answers. I certainly don't have all the answers for your business, but my sessions like this are designed to help inform you and to give you some insight, and you're always welcome to ask questions. You can ask questions to me in the chat. Can't guarantee I'll get to answer them today, or you can ask questions to me through connecting with me on social media or sending me an email or whatever. You know, I want to be able to help. Obviously, I do paid work as well, so that's what funds this. So, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. But these sessions are not designed as sales sessions. They're designed to help educate you. So today we're talking about LinkedIn, one of the earliest social networks. In fact, it was actually up and running before Facebook. I've been on LinkedIn for probably about 12 years or so. And I'm going to start by giving you some examples. So you've got some sharing the slides here. And the first example I'm putting up is a guy called Benjamin Dennehy. Now, I know Benjamin personally. I've met him on a number of occasions. And he is an example of somebody who has grown his business by using LinkedIn. For him, LinkedIn is his primary sales tool. Until recently, his website was incredibly basic. As he said himself to me, his website was basically a place where people went to pay him. That's all it did. It was a payment portal, effectively. And really, he used LinkedIn as his primary sales tool. And he is a salesperson. That's what he does. He's a salesman or a sales trainer. And I'll just give an example of one of the posts that he puts up, because LinkedIn, it's a social media platform. People post on social media. And I don't expect you to read all the words that are on the slide there. You can go and look at Benjamin's profile for yourself. And if you go to someone's profile, you can scroll down and you can find the activities section, and you can see there all the posts that they have made and the comments they've made. And this is an example of one of the posts that Benjamin puts up. He posts a bit less often than he used to, but certainly most days he posts. And he's talking all the time. What he posts about consistently all the time is about sales, and particularly often talking about how sales is often done badly, not done very well. He doesn't criticize salespeople. He criticizes and critiques sales process. And he's a sales trainer, and he has his own technique for sales. So I'm not here to sell Benjamin to you. What I'm here is that he has built a business, his business, and he's doing very well. I can say that. And he runs lots of training courses, and LinkedIn was the underlying tool that he used to do that. And he did it basically by posting. And as he said to me and to others, he posted for a number of years on LinkedIn and remained invisible. What you're seeing today is the result of several years worth of consistent posting and talking around a particular subject. So it takes time, like all social media. Making progress takes time. So another example of small business owner who is using LinkedIn effectively. And Louise, I don't know Louise particularly, but she and I have exchanged messages, and she confirmed to me that she is getting business out of LinkedIn. And she is a copywriter, which is the world that I have inhabited in the past. And she I'll give you an example of one of her posts. So I'm going to put up, there's the text of one of her recent posts. Again, if you look up Louise Fallon on LinkedIn, you'll find a lot of her posts are very similar. She basically talks about the value of copywriting and how useful copywriting is and how useful a website is. And she does that most days. And it's arguably comes across as very repetitive. She gets business from LinkedIn. And certainly anyone who follows Louise on LinkedIn is in no doubt whatsoever what it is that she does. So she's talking about the same subject. She's being consistent. And of course, she's a copywriter, so she's able to articulate the similar message using different words and communicates that very well. So she's making a good use of LinkedIn as a small business owner. Now, I've given you two examples there of businesses which are services. So Benjamin, he's a sales trainer, and Louise, she is a copywriter. So they're both providing a service, and they're providing a service to other businesses. So what a lot of people say is, well, that's all very well, but I'm not in the B2B market. I'm not business to business. I sell business to consumer, and I sell a physical product. I don't sell a service. LinkedIn isn't really for me because LinkedIn is all about recruitment and bigger businesses. It's worth remembering that the average user of LinkedIn has higher disposable income than the average user of other social networks, partly because it's attracting people who are involved in larger businesses and who have more senior positions and have often a good salary. So the average LinkedIn user is better off than the user of any other social network, which makes them potentially a prime target, if you like, for your marketing, because at the end of the day, everyone on LinkedIn is a person. Everyone using LinkedIn is a person. And I've heard people say, well, I don't go on LinkedIn because I make or sell jewelry, and LinkedIn's for big businesses. Well, every person on LinkedIn is a person. All of those people will buy gifts from time to time. They are looking for opportunities. They may not be using LinkedIn to go shopping for gifts, but if you become visible to them, part of their network on LinkedIn, and they see your posts on a reasonably regular basis, not buy from me, buy from me, buy from me type posts, but posts that are interesting and relevant, then you are naturally going to be attracting business from these people. So there's a big opportunity there for small businesses. And there's an example I've got on the screen here, which is the upcycled cufflink lady, Zoe Wongsam. And Zoe is a good example of somebody who makes and sells a product. In this case, it is jewelry. And for her, LinkedIn is a channel. And she certainly says, that LinkedIn is undervalued by people in the same market as her, people in the same industry as her. There's an opportunity there. And what does Zoe talk about? I mean, I've talked about Benjamin and sales training all the time, and Louise, and she's talking about copywriting all the time. What does Zoe talk about? Well, again, you can go to her profile, you can see her activity, scroll down and find the activity section. And her most recent post on LinkedIn, Zoe is different from the other two. Zoe doesn't post about the same subject over and over again. Zoe posts a whole variety of things. In her most recent post, posted, and these screenshots are relatively fresh, posted just a day or two ago, she's talking about, she's basically supporting the daughter of a friend who's creating jewelry. So she's talking about the jewelry stuff. But if you scroll further down, there's posts about where they've been on holiday as a family, but they're always interesting, and she writes in an engaging style. And that's really the thing about using LinkedIn. LinkedIn is very much driven, the posts are very much driven by the use of the written word. There is video on there, and you can also do stories on LinkedIn. So there is a space for video on LinkedIn and for photographs as well. And Zoe has illustrated her post with a photo. But LinkedIn is one of the places where words are still really, in my mind, paramount as a way of communicating through the posts. A lot of the posts are text only. You won't find text only posts. Well, you won't find text only posts on Instagram because that doesn't work. You have to have a picture or a video. But you won't find many text only posts on Facebook. You won't, and a lot of posts on Twitter, of course, have got pictures or video these days. Whereas a lot of the posts on LinkedIn are text only. A lot of emojis. People use emojis a lot. So the message there from those three examples is that there are people who are getting good business out of LinkedIn. They've invested in setting up a profile. They've spent time creating a profile that looks good, and they've thought about the wording. And I won't have time today to talk about profiles in detail, but certainly that's something that you want to spend some time thinking about. And you can Google, how to create a LinkedIn profile. There's plenty of good advice out there. There's people who've written, or you can ask, so you can get in touch with me if you want to. But those are 3 good examples of people who are using LinkedIn and getting value from it. So let's cover now some absolute basics of using LinkedIn. Don't know how familiar you are with LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is a social network in the same way as Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. So it's driven by making connections. So you need to get an audience of people who will see your stuff, and to get stuff into your news feed. Again, as a social network, it's driven by a news feed. The first thing you see when you go into LinkedIn these days is the news feed. That's the posts from the people that you follow and from the hashtags that you follow. So in order to get that newsfeed full of relevant and useful information, you need to be making connections. You can choose to follow people on LinkedIn, or you can choose to connect with people, and there's a better value that comes out of connecting. And often the question is, well, who do I connect with on LinkedIn? Well, a good place to start would be business contacts that you've already got in the real world. The real world. LinkedIn is in the real world. It's just a digital version of it, isn't it? In their terms of service, a few years back, LinkedIn used to say, we recommend that you only connect with people that you know in real life, or something such wording, which to me was always a bit odd, and to others as well, because the whole point about networking, and LinkedIn is all about networking, the whole point about networking is that you are connecting with people that you don't already know. You don't go to a networking meeting and only talk to people you already know. It's likewise on LinkedIn. So who do I connect with on LinkedIn? Well, start with connecting with people that you already know. Send them connection requests, but then send connection requests to others. You want to send me a connection request today? You are very welcome to. Every connection request that I get, I will look at and I'll think, is this person someone that I think would be useful for me to connect with? And everyone has different markers as to, or criteria for whether they will agree to connect with you or not. Some people will connect with they will accept every single connection request. Other people will say, well, is this person in the same industry as me? Are they a potential competitor? Because if they're a potential competitor, so let's say a copywriter tries to connect with Louise, would Louise accept a connection request with another copywriter? Well, knowing Louise, I think I'm confident saying yes, that she would. But some people I know won't connect with other people who are in the same industry because they see them as competitors. Personally, I'm a big advocate of collaboration rather than competition. Yes, these people are competitors in the sense that the clients may be looking at, well, should I use A, B, or C for this? But there's also a lot of scope for collaboration and knowledge sharing and that sort of thing. So I'm much more an advocate of that. Connect with people who are local to you. Connect with people who are you see someone on LinkedIn and you think, well, it'd be useful to connect with them. There's no harm sending a connection request. You have the option to personalize a connection request often. I say often because sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. There are various ways of navigating around LinkedIn, and some routes through to making a connection give you the option to add a personal note. Some just send a message saying, Andrew wants to connect with you. So I highly recommend using the option to add a personal note, but it's not necessary. I've accepted connection requests from people who haven't bothered to send a personal note. I just look at them and I think, yeah, actually, this is somebody that I'm quite happy to connect with. But it's built around making connections. And if you want to start using LinkedIn seriously, then I recommend that you develop a little bit of a strategy of connecting with people on a regular basis to build that series of connections that you've got. LinkedIn is very much about the news feed. I've already talked about the news feed. And there are stats that show that of all the people on LinkedIn, and there are something like, I think, 700 million plus people on LinkedIn now, and a lot of the UK's professionals are on LinkedIn. There are, the stats would say that less than 5% of the people who are using LinkedIn are actively posting on a regular basis. or engaging in any way. Now, there are a lot of lurkers on LinkedIn. What's a lurker? Well, a lurker is somebody who will go onto LinkedIn, they will read the news feed, they might like one or two things, but they don't add anything new. They don't particularly comment on things. They don't share posts. They don't write their own posts very often, but they do use LinkedIn as a news feed because it's business oriented. There are less pictures of cats on there, let's say. There's less pictures of people's dinner. And there are pictures of cats in people's dinner, but you don't see them so often. It's a different feel. It's a bit more professional than Facebook. So a lot of people use LinkedIn as a way of keeping up to date with what's happening in their industry and happening around them. So again, you could be part of that if you are actively posting and engaging on LinkedIn. So if you're going to be using LinkedIn, I seriously recommend that you think about posting on a regular basis. And by regular basis, at the very least, I encourage you to post on LinkedIn once a week. And what do you post on LinkedIn? What you may be thinking, well, what sort of things can I post about? Take a look at what other people are sharing on LinkedIn. You'll learn from them and you'll see a whole variety of stuff. It's not all dull, boring business stuff. There's lots of conversation about life. There's lots of, LinkedIn has become much more about people sharing all different aspects of life. There's stuff on there about family. There's stuff about mental health. People talking about their holidays. There's a whole variety. Just before this training session got going, I was talking to Andrew about ironing, and I've not seen anyone posting on LinkedIn about ironing, but you know what? I might go on our LinkedIn afterwards and I might reference that and talk a bit about ironing and do you iron? Fairly light-hearted stuff, but people. At the end of the day, LinkedIn users are people and they want to engage in conversations. They're not about all variety of subjects. It's not all just business. So I'd encourage you to write posts and look at what other people are writing and using LinkedIn to do. And another great way of networking on LinkedIn is to write comments. So, and that might be a good place to start, or if you haven't been using LinkedIn for a while, get on LinkedIn and start sharing, commenting on things. I use the word sharing posts in the same way as on Facebook and on Twitter. You can share somebody's post into your own newsfeed. So you might see a really interesting post and you think, oh, I'm going to reshare that. And resharing is a lazy way, I'll say, of sharing, of creating content, as it were, because you're not really creating content, you're just sharing somebody else's content. The LinkedIn algorithm, various people have tested it over the time, and certainly the LinkedIn algorithm doesn't seem to give a lot of visibility to shared posts. Sometimes it does work. I've shared a post. In fact, one of my most visible posts ever, one of the ones I got the highest response on, was actually sharing somebody else's post. So like all rules, it's not an absolute, but as a general rule, sharing of posts on LinkedIn doesn't get you so much visibility. So I wouldn't recommend that. Likewise, sharing links. If you're sharing a link to something on your website or something else, and again, some people do that on a regular basis. They're sharing links to all sorts of things. Links don't tend to rank really highly in the newsfeed. The algorithm seems to push them down. So there's no harm sharing a few links, but really the posts that often work best are just simple text posts. Yes, often with emojis. It's about the wording. It's about how you're engaging with people, how you're encouraging people to engage. Because what the algorithm is looking for is when you post something on LinkedIn, the algorithm is saying, well, are people going to engage with this post? And are they actually engaging? Are people actually making comments? Particularly, comments are a big sign of engagement. So coming back to you making comments on other people's posts, that obviously helps their post to get visibility, but it also helps you to get more visibility. It tells LinkedIn that you're active because you're making comments. But those comments, particularly if you're making insightful and informed comments, they form part of a conversation, and that helps to attract people to potentially to be looking at your profile and to be sending you connection requests. Oh, who's this person that's made this interesting comment on this particular post? I think I'll send them a connection request because I think it's somebody that I would want to be connected with on LinkedIn. So I encourage you to be active in making comments on LinkedIn. So you can like posts, but likes they don't carry much weight. It's quite nice that your post has been liked 30 or 40 or 50 or 600 times, but comments conversation is what people are interested in. After all, think of it as a virtual networking meeting. You go to a networking meeting in person, you want to have a conversation with people. So I encourage conversation. The same principle applies on other social networks, of course, particularly Twitter. Twitter's great for this, but LinkedIn as well works really well for having conversations and making contacts and connections. So thinking about LinkedIn strategies, how might you use LinkedIn? First comment to make would be, you can't be effective on all the social networks, really even all the main social networks, unless you have a team working for you. You can't be active and effective on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, never mind TikTok and all the other places where you could be active. You simply can't spread yourself too thin. So you have to decide, am I going to use LinkedIn? Now, I recommend having a presence on all the social networks and posting on them occasionally, but the reality is there's going to be one or two where you really focus and spend your time. And for some people, like the examples I gave earlier on, they've chosen to use LinkedIn as their primary network. And there are two basic strategies to using LinkedIn. Again, there's a whole host of different sort of detailed approaches to strategies, but there are two very, very basic approaches to using LinkedIn. And the first of these is an inbound strategy. Now, by inbound, what I'm talking about is where you create a presence on LinkedIn, and then you post on LinkedIn, and you make comments on LinkedIn, and then you wait for people to come to you. This is the approach that I've tended to adopt over the years. And it's the approach that Louise adopts that I've talked about earlier on. And it's also the approach that Benjamin, actually, in fact, I think all of the ones that I talked about earlier on use this approach. They use an inbound approach. So they're putting themselves out there, they're presenting themselves, and they're saying, this is what I do. And they're talking about stuff, and they're having conversations, and they're waiting for people to come in to them. Of course, they're making it really easy. Benjamin makes it easy because he has courses. He's often running courses, and so he'll say, if you're interested in what I'm talking about, sign up to my course. Louise is constantly encouraging people to get in touch. So you want to make it easy for people to get in touch with you or to connect with you, to become an inbound opportunity. And it depends upon the sort of product that you're selling or the service you're selling as to how to do that. But bear that in mind, whatever strategy you've got, if you're using an inbound strategy, you want to draw people to you, make it easy for them to take that next step. Now, LinkedIn is just part of the longer journey that people are on. The buyer goes on a journey, your potential customer, your future customer is on a journey. At the start of that journey, they're just looking around, they're doing some research, they're thinking about what to do or buy or whatever. And towards the end of that journey, obviously they're making a choice about whether to choose your product, your service, or so LinkedIn is just one slice of that journey. You need to make sure you're using LinkedIn in a way that helps them to take the next step that you want them to take. So an inbound approach is putting yourself out there and saying, this is what I do, and then waiting for people to come to you. The other strategy, and you see this quite a lot on LinkedIn, is an outbound strategy. So an outbound strategy is where you are actively using LinkedIn to go prospecting. You're actively using LinkedIn to approach people. So you might send someone a connection request on LinkedIn, or they send you a connection request. It more often happens that way around. So somebody sends you a connection request on LinkedIn. This happens to me quite often. So somebody who's, let's say, a wealth manager or a recruitment consultant, and typically I can predict the sort of person who's going to take an outbound strategy, because what they do is they send me a connection request and I think, okay, I'll connect with you, but I'm fairly sure, or a growth specialist, a business growth specialist, they're the other ones, I can help you grow your small business. And these are all valid things. These are all, I'm not criticizing these people at all, and I'm not criticizing their approach. But what will tend to happen is once you connect with these people, within a day or two, you'll get a direct message from them saying, hey, Andrew, and in fact, I think I've got my next slide. Yeah, here we are. So this is a typical example. So, hi, Andrew. This is a couple of days after I connected with this lady, Kay. Like us, I'm sure you've used and seen a number of profiling tools and blah, blah, blah. And so she's immediately offering to have a conversation with me about a particular tool that she's wants to sell me. And some people are very much, hey, if you want to have a conversation about this, this is what I do, then, you know, I'm here, and that can work. Other people are much more pushy. And again, that can work for some people. It's partly about timing. If you put the right product in front of the right person at the right time, then they may well respond to it. So that's an outbound strategy. And there are people who are using LinkedIn and using LinkedIn effectively as a method of, if you like, cold calling. You know, cold calling on the phone or cold emails, cold direct messages on LinkedIn. And of course, some people don't like that. There's quite a lot of complaint on LinkedIn about, oh, I've been spammed again or whatever by yet another. Personally, it's not a big deal to me. Personally, I'm quite happy if people want to run their business that way. If I want to respond, I will do. And if quite often I go back to people and say, hey, thanks, but you know, I'm not really interested. I'm not in the market for that. I'm not going to make any rash promises about, well, maybe in the future I'll get in touch, because probably I won't. That's the reality of it. But other people don't like that. So there's pros and cons to it. Some people will disconnect from people who send them cold messages. That's their choice. There's no rights and there's no wrongs. You want to build a good sized network of connections on LinkedIn. You know, LinkedIn works through the connections, the search mechanisms within LinkedIn work through the connection. So the more connected you are, the more likely you'll start to come up in other people's searches and become more visible. You want to build that network. But again, as I said earlier on, that takes time. So those are the two basic strategies for using LinkedIn. There's an inbound strategy and an outbound strategy. So I hope I've given you some thoughts about whether you'll be using LinkedIn for yourself. And so you're very welcome to send me questions or make comments, either through the chat or through email or social media after. I'll spend the next few minutes just dipping into LinkedIn. Just some other aspects to LinkedIn. It is a social network. I'll change to a live screen in just a minute. And as a social network, it's got all the usual elements. It's got a news feed, which is the posts from people that you follow and people you're connected to. You can have business pages on LinkedIn. So you have a personal profile and you can have one or more business pages. Terms and conditions for LinkedIn are that you're only meant to have one personal profile. In the same way that you have one profile on Facebook, you can have as many business pages if you like. Business pages tend to get a lot less visibility in the algorithm. So I highly recommend that you post from your own personal page on LinkedIn rather than a business page. Business pages have their place, but certainly the personal profile is much more visible. There are groups on LinkedIn in the same way that there are groups on Facebook. There aren't groups on Twitter, but you can use hashtags to create sort of informal communities on Twitter. There are groups on LinkedIn. They've got a bit of a bad reputation because groups did fill up with spammers a few years back and really became full of rubbish, to be honest. Some people find groups work really well for them on LinkedIn, but a lot of us don't. I haven't got any value from groups on LinkedIn from a long time back, but they are an option. And I know LinkedIn have said them for themselves, you know, they want to try and revive groups and breathe some life back into the concept. Stories, you're probably familiar with stories on Instagram and stories on Facebook. These short life, typically 24-hour posts that are a sort of different news feed effectively, came out of Snapchat and short life posts. Twitter experimented with stories. They called them fleets. They've actually given up on stories quite recently, Twitter, which is interesting. And LinkedIn also has stories. Now, the interesting thing about LinkedIn stories is that they are not visible on the desktop. And you can use LinkedIn on your mobile device. There is an app for it, or you can use it on the desktop. And LinkedIn, because of its professional bias, I would say, I've not checked any stats on this recently, but I'd say probably more people use LinkedIn, or a higher proportion of people use LinkedIn on the desktop compared to mobile app versus the other social networks. Certainly, most of my use of LinkedIn is on the desktop rather than on the mobile app. There is a mobile app for it, but stories only work on the mobile app rather than the desktop. And LinkedIn are experimenting with various other forms of video and things like that, and we can expect to see more changes in the future. So video is an increasingly important part of LinkedIn. You can do lives on LinkedIn as well, but again, they've limited those. Only certain people can do live, can broadcast live right now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to quit from sharing the slides. Do just one last slide before I do that. So, as I said, I provide this training for free. If it would be useful to you to have a one-to-one session on training social media, particularly using LinkedIn, if you particularly would like someone to walk you through your profile, then you're setting up your profile, then I run one-to-one sessions. Just get in touch. And typically these normally cost £59 an hour, but right now, if you come to me and you've been on one of these free sessions, then you can get it for £49 an hour. Right, sales pitch over. So I'm going to come out of this. I'm going to stop sharing, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into sharing my screen with the LinkedIn. Thank you for coming on this morning, by the way. It's good to see a reasonable number of folks here. So I am now hopefully sharing with you my desktop, and you're looking at my LinkedIn. So this is just a quick walkthrough just for these remaining few minutes, just to give you, again, a feel for how LinkedIn looks and works, particularly if you haven't used it for a while, as many small business owners haven't. So what you're looking at here is the typical screen you get when you go into LinkedIn. So you're looking at your news feed. So the news feed is what's up through the middle of the screen. If I just click on new post, it's going to take me to the most recent posts. And the algorithm is deciding what to show me. There are, as with all the social media channels these days, there are ads. So that video that's running is an ad from BT. But if I scroll down a bit, so I can see a post here. I'll just pick out 2 or 3 of the posts that are coming up in my newsfeed. Remember, the algorithm is deciding what to show me. It's deciding what to show me based upon who I'm connected to, subjects that it thinks I'm interested in, things that I talk about, comment on, and all the rest of it. So so there's top post, for example. There's a post here from the chap called Paul. Tells me he is a second level connection. So Paul is not, I am not connected to Paul on LinkedIn. He is a second level connection, a second tier connection. What that means, Paul is connected to somebody else that I'm also connected to. And LinkedIn gives you that information. It shows you it's whether someone's a first tier connection, that is someone you're connected to, whether a second tier, so that there is somebody you're connected to in common, or a third tier, so it's going down the hierarchy, and then that's where the tiering stops. It doesn't show you anything below that. So you can see first, second, or third tier. So why am I seeing a post from somebody who is a second tier connection? Because I'm not following them and I'm not connected to them. Well, I'm seeing that post because somebody that I am connected to, Chris Moody, has commented. So when somebody in your connection network comments on your posts, it can throw your posts into the path of other people who are not connected to you. The algorithm can do that. So that's why it's useful to have that large connection, and it's useful to be making comments and encouraging people to make comments on your posts, because it helps to broaden the visibility of your posts on the network. And so I'm being given the option here. Do I want to follow Paul? I can just do a follow. He doesn't need to approve that. Obviously, I might say, actually, I want to check out who Paul is. So I'd go through to put the cursor over his profile. It gives me a little pop-up telling me he's a trusted freelance copywriter, tells me who the shared connections are. And if I'll do that, I'll click on it. So I'm now going through to Paul's profile. As far as I'm aware, I've never looked at Paul's profile before. And it's important to talk about profiles earlier on. It's important to structure your profile in a way that when people come and look at it, you're going to connect with the right sort of people. So he's using a very simple style of profile in terms of he got the banner image at the top there. Always make use of the banner image. So he's got freelance copywriting and content. So I won't say it's black and white what he does, because it's not, it's black and yellow, but it's very clear what he does. And he's put that little yellow circle around his face and the line in there as a way of sort of trying to grab attention. And then, if you're not sure about creating your own profile, look at the copy that other people are using on their headline. So for examples, his headline, trusted freelance copywriter. Okay, so trusted tells you what he does, freelance copywriter. And then he's a bit more detail. I create content for the tech sector. Okay, so he's a copywriter, but he writes specifically for the tech sector. And then there's more information, obviously, below that. He's got 4,000 followers, which is a good number of followers. And so on. So you scroll down the profile. I talked earlier on about seeing people's activity. If you want to see what people are posting, so I've scrolled down Paul's profile and I've come to the activity section, and it's showing me a number of some of his most recent activity. If I click on see all activity, click on there. Do I want to see all the activity, which is what it's showing me here, or do I just want to see articles or posts or documents? You can post articles which are different from posts. So a post is the typical thing that people put onto LinkedIn. So I'll click on posts. So you can see there, these are the posts that he's put on. And I talked about text posts being, there's still a huge opportunity for text only posts on LinkedIn. And Paul here, his first post is text only. So, and he opens with the sort of quite, statement that creates a bit of controversy potentially. Cold emails deliver sales. So do you agree with that or not? So he's immediately provoking you to think, oh, do cold emails deliver sales? Do I agree with that? And when you're structuring a post, it's good to make sure you have enough lines so that you provoke LinkedIn into showing you the see more button, or showing your readers the see more button, because by clicking on see more, it tells the algorithm, oh, Andrew's actually interested in what Paul's writing. So it's a little signal to the algorithm that Andrew's interested in this, that I'm interested in this, which means that I may see more stuff from Paul in the future. And then there's the text there, and then I'm not going through that in detail, and then right down at the bottom there, there's the hashtags, and hashtags have become a thing on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's own recommendation is that you use typically about 3 hashtags per post. So he's using hashtags there. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my newsfeed and scroll down, and you can see there's a whole load of other stuff. So Ella Orr likes his post from John Asperian. By the way, John Asperian, if you're interested in LinkedIn and you want to know more about LinkedIn, John Asperian is a freelance writer. A lot of freelance writers in this today. That's just coincidence that I'm mentioning that, but those are who are appearing in my newsfeed right now. John Asperian has spent a lot of time looking into LinkedIn and does research on LinkedIn. So he's a good person to look up, follow him, see what he has to say about LinkedIn. I'm more of a generalist. I cover a whole variety of different digital platforms. John is very much become specialized on LinkedIn over the last 2 or 3 years. So as I said, it's very much driven by the newsfeed. So typically you'll go onto the newsfeed and you'll scroll down, and there's someone who's using an image as part of their newsfeed. You see quite a few photos, but so text really works well. There's video. If you're going to use video on social media, I always recommend you use captions, because most of us tend to watch, I think it's around 90% of people watch or use social media with the volume turned off. So always use captions. That's my recommendation. So the best way to learn LinkedIn is to, let's get away from that distracting video. The best way to use LinkedIn is to get in there, start navigating around, to get a feel for how it works. As I said, there's a desktop version through the browser, and then there's the app on the smartphone. My experience generally is through the desktop. Okay, so where are we at? Yeah, I'm going to wrap it up there. So thank you very much for joining in this morning. I hope that was useful to you. Can I have a copy of the recording? I'm trying to move the client from LinkedIn to LinkedIn from Facebook. Yeah, I've not had a request for a copy of the recording. So see what I can sort out for you, Andrea. If you've got any other comments, then feel free to put them in the chat now. Be admin free. Okay, so that's how Andrew again putting her link into So I'll follow up with that connection as well. So thank you for following on this morning. I said, I hope that was useful to you. I am running other free courses, and these are just bite-sized, really, just to help inform you about the different options that are available to get you thinking about that. And so if you want to follow up in detail, if you want to have a one-to-one training session, that can be arranged. But I'm going to wrap up now. So thank you again for taking the time to join me this morning. I said, I hope that was useful to you. Always keen to get your feedback. I will send out feedback requests after this. If you could take a moment to give me some feedback, that would be great. I've been doing training for 25 years. I'm thick-skinned. The feedback that's great, that's useful to me. It's great to know that stuff is good, but you know what? I really want to know the stuff where it could be even better, because I want to serve you well through what I do, through my paid training and through my free training. So thank you again, and I'm going to cut off in just a moment. So if you want to save the chat, feel free to do that, and hopefully I will see you again on another training course. Thank you and good morning. Have a good rest of your day.